So the talk today is about how we think about our own creative ability, how we think about the creative ability of others, and why both of those things matter. And is everyone in the right room? Yeah. Can you hear me at the back okay? Yeah. Okay, so my name's Rob. I'm a freelance consultant and facilitator. I used to be a techie, full disclosure, so I'm probably a bit biased on this. I now spend about a third of my time working with technical teams, about another third of my time working with what people could term the business, so customers, and the final third of my time I spend sorting out disputes and tensions between these groups. And today I've got two perspectives to offer you. First of all is a practitioner perspective. I've been doing this for 12 years, so I've got a few observations from over the years. The other perspective is I've recently finished the executive MBA at Henley Business School, and I'm not quite sure why, but I chose to study creative problem solving and personality, the relationship between these two things. And I found it a fascinating subject, and so I've just found myself talking about it more and more. And what I mean by creativity is the Ken Robinson definition, so the process of having novel ideas that add value. Okay? This isn't about artistic creativity, as you've probably worked out. So before I go too much further, I'd like to know just a little bit about who I've got in the audience. So hands up if we've got any people who are techies in the room. Yeah, a couple of shrugs. Okay, 1.5, there's probably 3 in total. Hands up if you used to be a techie at any stage in your career. Okay, yeah, brilliant. Hands up if you work with technical people at the moment, if you work with techies in any capacity. Most hands, okay. Hands up if you haven't put your hand up yet but want to feel involved. Brilliant, brilliant. Okay, so we've got a great range of perspectives. I'm going to leave about 10 minutes at the end, so please pile in at the end. Final question for you. Who here is creative? Put your hand up, please, if you think you're creative. Brilliant. Almost everyone looking around. Okay, that's fantastic. So I was, a little bit about me, I was a techie for the first 4 years of my career. I spent the large part of my working day in a darkened room writing software for a financial services company. And at the time, I thought that I was probably the least creative person in the world. And I've come to realise that thinking that way about yourself, thinking that you're not creative, is really not very good for, it's not good for me, it's not good for the teams that I work in. It's not good for the organisations that I'm a part of and the communities that I'm a part of either. So I've come to realise that that's just a profound mistake. And so my MBA research changed my perspective on what it means to be creative and the relationship between creativity and personality. And I had a hunch that other people would find this interesting and useful. And about that time, just after I'd finished my research, two of these talks popped up. Hands up if anyone hasn't seen the Ken Robinson talk. Okay, really good talk. You can tell everyone else has seen it, it's a good talk. David Kelly is the founder of IDEO. He's also the founder of the Stanford Design School. He talks about creative confidence, creative self-efficacy. That is a great talk. And just hearing these two guys who are very successful practitioners, practitioner a little bit more on the academic side, just made me think there's something here that I need to explore more. And the great thing about TED Talks is they're inspiring and they're kind of snappy, you get your 19-minute dose. But I thought that maybe we should do something rather than just listening to a talk. And what doing meant to me was to kind of practice these things. So what I did was I designed a workshop that I run at Henley Business School. It's a full-day workshop. I run it for master's students. And what it does is it allows people to practice various creative skills and also improve their confidence. So yeah, I had a little bit of a light bulb moment thinking that other people needed to hear this message. This workshop, I find it really interesting, and the feedback that I get at the end of it makes me think that I'm kind of onto something here, and people really enjoy it. So it drives me to talk more about it. The sort of jumping off point for talking about creativity typically is brainstorming. It's something that we're all familiar with. but something in my experience, I just came from a brainstorming session that's done pretty badly universally, and I think there are a few reasons for that. The goal of brainstorming should be to come up with a large volume of ideas, okay? And what you should not be doing is evaluating those ideas at that stage. The evaluation comes later on. So I rarely see this done well. What often happens is that people don't really understand the rules and the process, and when it was conceived, there are some rules, and rules can be very useful for creativity. Specifically, what they don't understand and appreciate always is that there will be an opportunity for evaluation. So the people who have a natural preference for black hat or critical analytical thinking, that is very valuable, but not during the brainstorming, not during the divergent thinking stage. So even the people that do understand the rules, some of them just seemed either really uncomfortable with the process, or they seemed just flat out incapable of doing these things that seemed very simple to me. And I was kind of interested by that. And so I think what that leads to is that you see a criticism of ideas, which means that people dry up, they don't give freely of their own ideas. The flow of ideas is blocked. And when you have this evaluation apprehension, so it's me worrying about what you're going to think, that means that I'm going to give you maybe my safe ideas because I'm worried, and then the quality of ideas drops off. So I was kind of thinking, what's this behaviour about? Why, can you spot these people? Where does it come from? And De Bono's got an interesting point on this. He calls it the intelligence trap. And he says that the more intelligent you are, the easier you can find fault in other people's ideas. And he's got a point, but I think there's emotional intelligence, which is knowing not to criticise and when to criticise. And I kind of see this thinking embedded into a few different organisations and a few different cultures that I've worked with over the years. So is anyone from IBM here? No? I was at a UX conference recently, and there was a UX director from IBM, and she was talking about a really sort of divisive divide between the technical people, who they refer to as the Asperger's crowd within IBM, and the non-technical people. And that's just really not very helpful. A friend is in marketing at Unilever. Unilever, one of the world's largest buyers of advertising. They have lots of creative agencies who come in with their ideas. And what my friend was telling me is that sometimes internal Unilever ideas are treated with a bit of condescension because they didn't come from the chosen people. And I think that really is a myth, that creativity is only for the chosen few. There's another myth previously that I skipped over, I'll just drop back. What Ken Robinson and David Kelly both say, kind of spoiler alert on this, is that it's our current habits that are reducing our creativity, and it's not something innate. This lone creative genius idea is a myth. So that's myth number one. So back to this one. The question bugging me was, who are these people within Unilever, within IBM, who are the idea shredders, and can we identify them somehow so that we can stop this from happening? So this is a bit about the research. My hypothesis was that cognitive thinking, so I've used MBTI as the Myers-Briggs type indicator. The reason I use that is just because it's really widely available, especially from business, from any business school. Businesses run it quite a bit. So I used MBTI, and I thought, I wonder what is the relationship between your cognitive style, your MBTI, and your preference for a range of creative problem-solving techniques. And the sample that I found, these 141 people, they came from an elective at Henry Business School. It was 50 hours they did. These are master's level experienced managers from lots of different countries. And they all use creative problem solving currently within their practice. So they're experienced guys, and I put to them 9 different techniques, including brainstorming. You have to use brainstorming, don't you? I also looked at 9 different categories of cognitive styles. So MBTI has the dichotomy. Who's familiar with MBTI? So there's introvert, extrovert, sensing, intuition, these sorts of things. So I used those dichotomies. There are also other groups, so the temperaments, learning styles, decision styles. I used all of these to try and see if there were patterns. And a way I've since rationalised this is by, who's seen this model before? It's come from a book called Gamestorming, which is really useful. What it does really handily for me is it allows us to visualise J.P. Guilford's work on divergent thinking and convergent thinking. So you start with a problem or a situation at point A, come up with a large variety of ideas in the divergent phase, and then evaluate the ideas, convergent thinking later on. And during the course, what you might find that you want to do is you want to zoom into the detail to examine, or you might want to zoom out and look at patterns and opportunities. And this, I think this is a really useful way of talking about and thinking about where we are in a creative, in the creative thinking process. What the theory predicts, emphasis on theory, is that there are these dichotomies in MBTI. So you've got perceiving versus judging, and people are plotted on a scale across them. And what the theory predicts is that people who have judging tendencies, who are better at the judging skills, will be more at home in the convergent thinking type exercises. And that perceiving people, who are more open to opportunities, according to Myers-Briggs, according to the theory, they prefer it, will be better at the divergent type opportunities. Similarly, with intuition, S-preference people, sensing people, will prefer convergent thinking more than Ms because they prefer to be cautious and analytical. That's what the theory says. So my findings were, I'm in the process of publishing this at the moment, so I can't give you the really boring long spreadsheet that shows you all the t-values and stuff, but I can give you some headlines. And the kind of interesting ones that pop out are that introverts had a higher preference than their extrovert counterparts for the one technique that didn't require speaking. Kind of makes sense. Older people had a higher preference for the technique that used post-it notes. Don't know why. These are all statistically significant results, by the way. Women had higher preference for the more creative techniques than men. I haven't tried to rationalise or understand any of these as yet. Sensing thinkers, a particular subgroup, preferred the metaphor technique more than other groups. So there were patterns that emerged from looking at the different cognitive types. But initially, for me at least, really disappointingly, I was hoping to find some results on this scale, and there was nothing. Which was, as a researcher, that's kind of annoying because you're hoping for stuff. But what I came to understand is that personality has less impact on preference for problem-solving technique than the theory predicts, particularly the MBTI theory. And I wondered, well, is that about the fact that these 141 people are all trained, and they've spent 50 hours understanding the psychology and the process, and they've got a vocabulary to talk about it. And I think that's exactly what it is. I think it is because the training. So I believe that understanding the process of techniques and practicing them, practicing behaviours specifically, help people improve their creative ability. But, yes, kind of...
Do you mind interrupting?
No, okay, can we do questions at the end, unless it's something that's not... Oh, write it down. So that's a group who have been trained in this. What about people who haven't had the experience? So now I run a workshop, and at the very beginning of the workshop I say, this is the same models. Can you just about see it at the back? So this is the divergent side, and this is the convergent side. I scribble it on a whiteboard. And what I now do is I say to people, you've got an MBTI, you've got preferences. Don't fight those preferences, they are there. So what they do is they tell you something about your comfort zone, so your tendencies, your habits. And what I've asked them to do here is, given that they know their MBTI, I've asked them to say, where are you most comfortable in this creative thinking process? And so what they've done here is that these greens are the Ps, and they've said that most of the greens have said that they prefer divergent thinking, and the pinks are the judges, and most of them have said that they prefer the convergent thinking. So I flipped the axis on this one and started to look at experiments, and you're the first people to see this, by the way, so maybe it makes sense, maybe it doesn't make so much sense. S's prefer to, almost unilaterally prefer to examine the detail within the process, and therefore they'll enjoy techniques that are more about the detail, and N's, apart from a few anomalies, prefer to look at opportunities. So what I say to people is, recognising that we have these tendencies, let's practice some different behaviours. And I think that by understanding and practising the behaviours, we can comfortably operate in what the Myers-Briggs crowd call out of preference. So do things that just don't come naturally, which sounds pretty intuitive. And I think it's especially okay when you do it on just a short-term basis. So for a 30-minute activity, it's not too much to ask someone to operate out of their preference. And so the results that I see from the feedback forms, etc., that people say afterwards is that it improves their confidence, they get to practice these behaviours, they understand the barriers to creativity more because they know how their interpersonal behaviours impact on the rest of the team. It also gives them a great language for discussing the process as well and the behaviours. So, today's about techies or not. The kind of consensus on where techies are relative to MBTI as a measure are that they are more introverted. Introverts are overrepresented in the population. Thinkers versus feelers. So introverts tend to be more thinkers. This isn't my research. This is decades of research that have all kind of came up with the same findings, and they tend to be more judging than perceiving. And so, I guess that kind of makes sense if you remember our techie days. It's kind of intuitive. But it's important to remember that MBTI details preference, not ability. Okay? So just because someone prefers to be a thinker doesn't mean that they can't feel, or that they're not able to develop their feeling skills. And so I think my point here is that techies can be creative. I've shown that people can operate out of their preference, particularly if there is a warm-up, if they've practiced and they're familiar with the behaviours that they need to show, if it's for a limited period of time, if they have a positive atmosphere, all the things that the science shows behind creative thinking are good, and if they're motivated as well. And for me, the warm-up's particularly key, because if you're in the middle of writing some PHP code, or you're in the mode of thinking that you're currently in is heavily analytical, it's a solo activity, it's you and your computer, and someone pulls you out and says, hey, let's go and be playful, interactive and creative, I think that's tough. My personal experience is that it's very difficult to pull someone out, and I found it very difficult being pulled out of that situation. So as Teresa Amabile from Harvard says, creativity under the gun, on demand, doesn't work. It's a bit of a myth. And so creating time and space, I feel, is absolutely essential. So what's stopping us? I think this idea that being judged is to be afraid of. It has been shown to limit people's freeness of which they express their ideas, and also the fear of failure as well. If you don't come up with ideas, you're never going to be wrong. By coming up with something new, there is always risk attached to it. And the myths that I want to kind of attack today are the myth of binary thinking, that there are creative and non-creative people. And that sort of either-or thinking, for me, is just a massive trap. We are all creative and analytical. And I think Ken Robinson has it absolutely right when he says, it's not how creative are you, it's how are you creative that we need to be thinking about. So, what's holding us back? Well, we need to overcome these beliefs. I think lots of work's been done to address them and to show them up for what they are. I think we need to face our fear, be afraid of being wrong, enter into some slightly sort of risky situations. This for me is a slightly risky situation. This is my first public talk in front of lots of people who I don't know. kind of risky, but I'm going to learn something from it. Hopefully. Also, just exposing the myths. I think we can all become more creative. So, straw poll, again, hands up if you think you are creative. Oh, I've got a few extra hands that time. Excellent. Brilliant. Yeah, slightly fickle poll, but still. So the context of this whole conference is leadership, creativity, and innovation. And when I think about leadership, I think that we're all leaders, and we all have a responsibility. We are all leaders in one way or another. And so, as leaders, we have a responsibility, I feel, to model the behaviours that we want to see from others. And specifically, I think we need to send out the right signals about who we believe is creative. And I think that's everyone. So my 3 tips for you to take away involve everyone. Partly because cognitive style isn't a barrier to creative thinking, and partly because ideas come from really unexpected sources. And that can be, so diversity is great, and that can be functional diversity, so having knowledge of a certain area, or it can be cognitive style, so thinking diversity. Both of these things are great for creativity. Also, just on process, be really clear about where you are in the process and what behaviours you expect from people. So, are you in the stage where piggybacking is the most appropriate behaviour? Piggybacking is when you build on other people's ideas. So this kind of comes from the improv world, where if someone gives you a cue, you're not allowed to say no. You have to say yes and, no matter how ridiculous it is. Is that a pineapple on your head? Yes, it is. I've just come from the pineapple shop. And you build on it, no matter how preposterous it is. So piggybacking, it's very suitable. Sometimes the idea shredding gloves do need to come out, particularly in the conversion stage, when you're selecting your ideas. Finally, make time and space for creative thinking. It's not something that can be developed overnight. Make it a habit would be my recommendation. Work at it, fight for it. Try and get your 10,000 hours or whatever you think to be mastery, but don't give up. And keep it playful and fun. That's it. Any questions?